Why did the Department of Justice, with Attorney General Pam Bondi at the helm, attack and effectively end Missouri's Second Amendment Protection Act? This would seem to fly in the face of President Trump's own executive order protecting Second Amendment rights. Recently, we received an update on the case DOJ versus Missouri. The Supreme Court declined to take up the case, meaning that Missouri's Second Amendment protection law is now dead. Thanks, Pam Bondi, for killing a state-level Second Amendment protection law. What a major mess up by the Department of Justice. Today, we're going to take a look at what went wrong with DOJ's handling of the Missouri SAPA case at the Supreme Court level, and how they continue to make Biden-era arguments against state rights to protect gun owners from unconstitutional gun control. Hi, I'm Ben, and you're watching the Minuteman Moment. The Department of Justice, under Attorney General Pam Bondi, had continued to attack Missouri's Second Amendment Preservation Act, treating it the same way the Biden administration did. That means they fought it in court to overturn it. The DOJ's decision to fight Missouri's SAPA puts Pam Bondi and the Department of Justice at odds with both the text of the Constitution and President Trump's own executive order directing agencies to protect Second Amendment rights. But you might be asking, what exactly is a Second Amendment Protection Act and what does it do? Well, Missouri's SAPA law, passed into law in 2021, was the state's effort to ensure that its officers and resources would not be used to enforce federal gun control measures that exceeded constitutional limits. On a basic level, the law prohibited state officials from enforcing certain federal firearm statutes and penalizes agencies that cooperated with them. Basically, the law said that the federal government cannot force state-level employees to carry out federal gun control policy. In the past, the Supreme Court has affirmed that laws like these, where states refuse to help enforce federal law, are protected repeatedly. In cases involving firearms, immigration, environmental regulations, and even marijuana enforcement, the court has recognized that the federal government cannot force legislatures or police to implement federal policies. Missouri applied this reasoning to the Second Amendment, instructing its law enforcement officers to focus on state law rather than federal regulations. Bondi's DOJ, however, treated Missouri's SAPA as if it were an act of nullification. In court filings, the Department of Justice insisted that Missouri cannot insulate itself from federal gun laws and work to strike down Missouri's Second Amendment Protection Act entirely. The irony is obvious. In our amicus brief to defend the Missouri law, GOA had repeatedly pointed out that the SAPA does not prevent federal agents from enforcing federal law. It simply stated that Missouri's officers would not be conscripted to help. That's a huge distinction, and it's backed up by the Constitution. The problem is not just the legal position DOJ took, but what it represents. President Trump campaigned on restoring Second Amendment rights and ordered his agencies to review and roll back infringements. Yet Pam Bondi's DOJ still carried forward the same arguments the Biden administration made, undermining a state law designed to protect gun rights. In acting in this way, the Trump administration is saying one thing and doing another. And what's worse, the implications extend beyond firearms. Since the DOJ succeeded in invalidating Missouri's SAPA, the precedent could weaken states' abilities to resist federal overreach in other contexts. It sends a message that Washington, D.C. can not only impose its own rules, but also force states to spend their resources enforcing them. That undermines both the Second Amendment and the 10th Amendment. For Missouri gun owners, the stakes are high. The Second Amendment Protection Act was intended to ensure that local police could not be drawn into federal prosecutions targeting law-abiding citizens. Without it, Missourians now risk seeing their own state and local agencies used to advance federal policies that many in the state would have rejected as unconstitutional. By pressing forward with the Biden administration's litigation strategy, the Department of Justice is eroding the balance of federalism that protects both state autonomy and individual rights. Missouri's law was a legitimate use of state authority in a constitutional system that depends on checks and balances. DOJ's decision to attack it and kill it, rather than respecting the boundaries Congress and the Constitution established, sends the wrong message. To states, to courts, and to the millions of Americans who believe this administration would be different. If the Trump administration is to fulfill its pledge of being the most pro-Second Amendment in history, that requires more than speeches. It requires ensuring that the Department of Justice under Pam Bondi does not undercut states when they act to safeguard constitutional rights. On Missouri SAPA, that responsibility was not met and instead failed. But you can do something about it. Call the White House at 202-456-1111 and tell President Trump to order the Department of Justice to stop fighting gun owners and to work with GOA to restore the Second Amendment. Now, thanks for watching. Be sure to like, comment, and subscribe to stay up to date with GOA's latest fights for your rights.